Hello there. My name is Salim Javed and I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Mass Communication and Media Technology at SGT University. You know me as someone who talks about film, but today I'm not going to talk about film, but I'm going to talk about something as important as film, and that is television. Today we are celebrating World Television Day on November 21st. Now, if I say that, it would not be wrong to say that television is the single largest source of video consumption, and on November 21st, the World Television Day was declared. Now, why on 21st November World Television Day was declared? Because on 17 December 1996, United Nations General Assembly established 21st November as the World Television Day, because on 21st November 1996, World Television Forum was held. But what was the need to establish World Television Day? The need for World Television Day was felt to highlight the impact of television on the process of decision making and how it represents or how it works as a symbol of communication and globalization in the contemporary world. So it is basically a symbol of communication and globalization in the contemporary world. Now, as we are celebrating World Television Day, let's understand how it all started, what has been the journey, how it occupied such an important space in our life, what turn and twist it observed, how it started worldwide, how it started in India, what are the genres or gimmicks that these television content creators use to entice you, to lure you. So, when we talk about television, we heard this term for the first time in 1900. There was first International Congress of Electricity in Paris, which was held in 1900, and there was a guy called Konstantin Dmitrievich Pryatsky. Now, this guy, Konstantin Dmitrievich Pryatsky, who was a Russian scientist, actually used the word television for the first time in 1900 in one of his papers, which he presented in First International Congress of Electricity in Paris. Now, after Konstantin Dmitrievich Pryatsky, if there is any other name that comes to our mind, is of somebody whom we know since our childhood. You will be surprised that how do we know this person. Now, if you remember when we were in 4th or 5th standard in social science book, where the name of the chapter was Transportation and Invention, there we read that it was John Logie Baird who invented television. Yes, I'm talking about the same John Logie Baird who invented television. He was a Scottish inventor, and he invented television and demonstrated the world's first live working television system on 26 January 1926. Now, this is a fact which is easy to remember, 26 January and 1926. So it was John Logie Baird who actually on 26 January 1926 demonstrated the world's first live working television system. Now, after Konstantin Dmitrievich Pryatsky and before John Logie Baird, there are a lot of people in between those who are worth mentioning. Now, before I talk about all those people, one has to understand that if there is a technological breakthrough, that technological breakthrough never happens in isolation. Now, you need some other inventions, some other discoveries to make your own technological breakthrough. Like there are two people about whom we must talk about. One is basically German physicist Arthur Kohn, and the other person is Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow. Now, these are the two gentlemen which is basically after Konstantin Dmitrievich Pryatsky and before John Logie Baird. So, who is Arthur Kohn? Who is Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow? Let's talk about it. Now, let's first talk about Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow, or you can remember him only as Nipkow. So, because it's a long name, so it will become difficult to remember. So, it's a long name like Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow. So, you remember it just as Nipkow. So, Arthur Kohn, Nipkow. So there are 4 names so far that I have talked about. One is, the first name is Konstantin Dmitryevich Pryatsky, then I'm talking about John Logie Baird, then Arthur Korn and Gottlieb Nipkow. Now, what Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow did, he basically theorized and patented a disk model which had holes, and each hole was capable of scanning a line of the picture. This Nipkow disk later became a useful and popular system. Now, John Logie Baird used this disk for scanning the image in more efficient way than proposed by Nipkow. Thus, he made this scanning system far more better. Now, what John Logie Baird took from Arthur Korn? Now, it was Arthur Korn's phototeletograph and the first successful image telegraphic transmission, which he actually did in 1913, is considered to be the miracle of modern science. So it was Arthur Korn's phototeletograph that he took help from, and his phototelegraph proved to be a very useful invention, not only in television, not only in the making of television, but otherwise also. So there are people now. So far, I have talked about Konstantin Dmitryevich Pryatsky, then John Logie Baird, then German physicist Arthur Korn, then Paul Julius Gottlieb Nipkow, and then other useful developments like better functioning camera, picture tube, the Braun tube or cathode ray tube, from slow scanning disk to fast scanning disk, which helped change the quality of capturing and projecting better, and all these things combined together actually helped television to grow, and it has occupied the kind of space and impact it has in modern times. The journey started like this. In 1928, we get to see world's first television station by the name of WGY television station, which was set up in New York. And from 1928 to 1948, from this one television station to 48 television stations in 28 different countries of the Western world. So this has been the huge development in 20 years. Now, this is basically so far the international development is concerned. Now, let's talk about the kind of development we as a country, as a nation had. Television came to India very late. So it was basically 15 September 1959 when we had the first television transmission, from an improvised studio from Akashvani Bhavan building in New Delhi. Now imagine that one of the reports says that in 1948 there were more than 2 crore television sets in America. In 1948 there were more than 2 crore television sets in America, and imagine that after 11 years of that, so 1948 and then 1959, almost after 11 years of that, we are doing it as a pilot project. We did this as a pilot project on 15 September 1959, and I'll be explaining why television came late to India and what impact it had, and why it became so late. A lot of people were talking about that television should be introduced in India, but it took 11 years. It took 11 years for television to come to India. Now, there are some concerns we'll be talking during this lecture. Now, for this experiment, this pilot project which was done on 15 September 1959, UNESCO actually helped us, or rather granted, they gave us $20,000 to Indian government. And it was not just only UNESCO which gave $20,000 to Indian government, it was Philips India. That company also gave transmitters to government of India on a reduced price. And not only just this, again US government also gave some more equipments to establish a television station in India. So imagine, in 1959 we were in such a position that UNESCO had to give us $20,000 grant, then Philip India gave concession on its equipment, and then again government of US also gave us more equipment. This is how we started our first we started our first television transmission on 15 September 1959. Now, initially, programs which were telecasted were of 20 minutes in duration and beamed from, as I said, from an improvised studio from Akashvani Bhavan. And now, this is important to understand that these programs were based on family planning, education, health, and agriculture. Now, I'll tell you during the lecture why I am focusing on these words: family planning, education, health, and agriculture. Now you have started television. Now you need audience for that, but we are taking grant, we are taking equipments. So teleclubs were made. Okay, so the audience for these programs were basically the members of 180 teleclubs, and they were provided free television sets for community watching by UNESCO. 2 years later, after the completion of the pilot project, UNESCO actually conducted a survey to know the impact of these of the television on these teleclub programs. When the report came, UNESCO suggested Government of India to use this powerful tool for community development. Now, the second thing that took place after this pilot project was in October 1961, which was the second step, which was taken in October 1961. And the second step was the launch of secondary school television project. Now, it was basically to help school teachers in Delhi to understand the science experiment where lab facility was not available. Now, what they did, they basically used lectures. So the lectures with those were made were syllabus based, which were basically from physics, chemistry, English, and Hindi, and they were beamed during school hours as part and parcel of the school activity. Now, I was saying that why television came late to India. Now, there are many reasons for that. Like, first of all, the major reason was because imagine that in 1959, which is like in 1947 we got independence, in 1959 we are experimenting with television with the help of other people. Now, technically at that point of time, the first question was, could a poor country like India can afford expensive technology like television? Now, this may sound very not even a question to you in today's time. But think of a time when we were newly independent country and Britishers left us an economy which was far from a working one. And as we got to know that we took 20,000 rupees, $20,000 grant from UNESCO, and then equipment, then some more equipments. So we were not in a position as a nation to start a television program. And so this was a valid concern then. Then the next important question was, what impact would the television will have on our culture? Now, this is a question which made thinkers rethink about the issue. Now understand that we as a nation survived a lot of, so many centuries. Why? Because we hold on to our values. Now you are exposing the entire nation, the entire population, without giving any proper brief. How do you expect that people will be reacting? This question is relevant even today. When people react to, you must have witnessed where people have reacted to visuals violently. Why still we are talking about media literacy? Why we are talking about media literacy at this point of time? Because we did not provide guidance before exposing our entire population to a new system called television. And people react to visuals. They react dramatically to visuals. Now, if in 2021 we are talking about media literacy, then this point is valid. So this is food for thought. Then again, the other concerns were TV would promote the consumeristic culture in our society, or would hunger for comfort, not increase the level of frustration and lead to much obvious difference between rich and poor. Now, if you think it from today's point of view, these may not even be any sort of concern. But think of the time when we got independence, our priorities were different. We were fighting with poverty. We were fighting to, put the entire nation on track. Luxury was not our priority. Education was our priority. Health was our priority. Agriculture was our priority, but not consumerism. And it was a time when the need of, bringing people from all the strata of life together, not making them feel whether they cannot be part of the economy or not. So at that time, it was more about society, developing the society towards a positive direction. I mean, consumerism and all these things were far from, it was a far from reality. We were more concerned about health. We were more concerned about population. We were more concerned about, about putting things right. We were building the temples of modern societies. Even entertainment came quite late. I mean, it came, on 15th August 1965, entertainment programs was introduced on Indian television. So not only entertainment program was introduced on Indian television, daily broadcast of 1 hour is also started on the same day on 1965, and then you also have the news bulletin starting in Hindi on in this year. Now, by the 1967, or to be precise, 26th January 1967, Krishi Darshan started. Now, people of my time, I mean those who are mid-80s or late 80s, those who were born, all of them have seen Krishi Darshan, irrespective of the fact whether they are farmers or not. But they have seen Krishi Darshan because, there was limited options to see. So I can bet that all the people of my generation has seen Krishi Darshan, though they are not farmer. So this popular program, Krishi Darshan, started on 1967, to be precise, on 26 January 1967. Now, by the time 1970 came, the duration of the services, of telecast services was increased to 3 hours. So earlier it was of 20 minutes, then it became 1 hour, then it became, by this time it became 3 hours. Now, this is the time, 70s is the time of expansion when it comes to television stations. Like by 1972, services were extended to Mumbai and Amritsar. By 1975, Doordarshan reached to 7 more cities like Calcutta, Madras, Lucknow, and 4 more. And interestingly, by 1976, commercial started on all centers. Now, 1970. Actually the entire 70s is very important when it comes to television, because it is a time when it was expanding. Now, by 1976, not only the commercial started, but this television unit, was separated from AIR, radio. And it became, now by 1976, to be precise, 1st April 1976, television was separated from radio and became Doordarshan. Now, before that, I did not use the word Doordarshan, reason being because it was part, radio and television both were, running shoulder to shoulder. But basically on 1st April 1976, radio was separated from, television was separated from radio. Radio was all, before that. Now, television and radio became an independent media unit under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Now, as I said, that 70s is very important when it comes to television expansion. One very interesting thing happened in 70s, which was 1973. You must have heard about something called SITE, which is basically Satellite Instruction Television Experiment. Now, there was a stalwart personality like Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. He actually proposed that we must educate and entertain people through satellite. Look at the vision of that person. You know, he was far ahead of his time, and the result was SITE, you know, Satellite Instruction Television Experiment. Now, for this SITE, you know, this experiment went on for 1 year, from 1st August 1975 to 31st July 1976. Now, for this 1 year experiment, Department of Atomic Energy entered into an agreement with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, of US for the loan of a satellite for 1 year. As per the agreement, NASA actually provided the services of satellite ATS-6 free of cost for 1 year. Now, because of this satellite and because all the initiatives and resources pulled together, around 2,330 to 2,500 villages of MP, Bihar, Odisha, Rajasthan, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh were covered. Now, the sole objective was social development that I was talking about just a few minutes back. You know, the daily 4-hour programs were telecasted on subjects like, again, notice the subject. The daily, the programs of 4 hours were on subjects, but not limited to education, agriculture, health and family planning. That I was talking about, why television came late to India. Even these themes were there. Even when the soap opera start, you will find the similar themes there. You know, the entire approach, the approach of the nation, of its leader, of then government and now government, is to make things work and things which are good for society. So that's therefore themes like education, agriculture, health, family planning, all these things were taken care of. Now, after 1 year, it was decided, let's continue at least at 40% of side, 40% of the area that site experiment. So in this 40% area, Gulbarga, Hyderabad, Sambhalpur, Muzaffarpur, Raipur and Jaipur were taken in. Now, what we learned from these programs or for this experiment, that there were a lot of observation, and some of them are that television is in a school is not going to affect enrollment or dropout rate, or information given to villagers was highly impersonal. You know, learning from satellite was basically learning through guidance. The slot was a problem for farmers, for students, and people had to go to community center to watch these programs. So time was also, not only the time, what place was also a problem. Then when students were learning, they were missing the classroom experience. Education was of general nature, whereas a student wanted to take more structural education, and a lot of villages gained a lot from it. So this was the total outcome of SITE experiment, which was technically a very successful experiment ahead of its time. By 1977, we have Varghese committee basically to examine how best Doordarshan and AIR could work without any government interruption. So they proposed to establish a National Broadcasting Trust, NBT, or Akash Bharti, another name, to create, to look after basically AIR and Doordarshan. And then Minister of Information and Broadcasting of India, Mr. L.K. Advani, introduced a bill in Parliament known as Prasar Bharati, to grant autonomy to AIR and Doordarshan. But with the fall of the government at the center, the bill was allowed to lapse. Now, so that is all in this part of video, we'll be coming up with more information. Till then, take care, stay safe.